This is not a top 10. This is a list. Just a plain list. There is no ranking here, because being like top 10 dudes who got buffed the hardest is like, yeah, let me just pick 8 random fires and then put Charizard and Blaziken at the top. I'm just going over a loose history of stuff they got over the years. These Pokemon all aged rather well, for the most part. Even with the buffs they did get, some of these dudes aged poorly. But hey, that's just how it goes. Some of these buffs did get lost in later generations. But you'll know which stayed and which went, because odds are, I mentioned that the buff is now gone, but it was nice when it did have it. With that said, Mist Magius, Pokemon Crystal Clear, and Wind Waker HD Let's Play. Link in the description below. Let's get started. Charizard. Am I right? We're just gonna get this one right the heck out of the way for the sake of the fact that it's the shiny golden goose's egg in a room full of nothing but grocery store eggs. Now, I'm not gonna go over every single buff it's gotten in explicit detail, but there is a buff I do want to go over that may be more niche knowledge to people who didn't play Gens 1 and 2. Charizard's special attack was originally 85 in Gen 1. That's right, because its special, which counted for both special attack and special defense, was 85. In Gen 2, when they split those stats up, Charizard is one of the few Pokemon that got buffed by this. And it got a 109 special attack. That's your secret info for you younger gamers. Now, outside of that, yeah, no, we know where this is going. Solar power in Gen 5, 2 Megas, a G-Max, Weather Ball, access to heavy-duty boots, and then stuff like Solar Beam and Scorching Sands have been solid for it. It's Game Freak's baby. We know it was gonna get the most stuff. Arcanine is another Gen 1 Pokemon that got buffed in Gen 2. Rather than having 80 special attack, it got 100 special attack from Gen 2. And then the 80 for its original special went into its special defense. This, while not meta-defining, was really nice for Arcanine fans who wanted success for their dog. Outside of that, it got Intimidate in Gen 3, which is one of the best abilities in the game, and then throughout the generations, it wound up getting really neat tools like Wild Charge, Play Rough, Extreme Speed, and Close Combat to hit through certain Pokemon that otherwise troubled it. However, nowadays, I think the biggest buff to it is its Hisuian form. I talked about this lad in my rock video a little bit ago. So just know, for the sake of brevity, this guy just likes to hit big recoil moves and hold the recoil. It's admittedly got a decent bit over the years to keep it viable, and would be one of the best fire types in VGC if Incineroar didn't exist. So, this is a Torkoal segment, but because it and Ninetales both got buffed in a very similar way that completely altered their playstyle, consider Ninetales like an honorable mention of sorts. They both quite literally got Drought, which changed their playstyle a lot and made them fixtures on teams for their abilities alone. However, I'm more gonna go over Torkoal, because it got more buffs. Ninetales got Nasty Plot and coverage over time, which was real nice, but they gave Torkoal a lot more to work with. So originally in Generation 3, it didn't have Rapid Spin. It got that in Gen 4 alongside the new cool Stealth Rock. Gen 5 and 6 were pretty well not dry for it. It got dry in Gen 7 when it got Drought, which made it a Hazard Remover, Hazard Setter, and a Weather Setter, which Sun really liked having. And then in Gen 8, they give it Body Press, as if it wasn't good enough at abusing that physical defense. Yeah, it got coverage moves, but it isn't using those. It's using Lava Plume, Willow, Rapid Spin, and either Stealth Rock, Yawn, or Body Press. It's a utility mod. At this point, the only thing they haven't given it is a form of reliable recovery. But imagine if it got Morning Sun. They gave Magcargo Shell Smash when Shell Smash was introduced last time I checked. It was one of the receivers of the move, but it was so slow that it didn't matter if it got Shell Smash or not. Gen 5 gave it Weak Armor, but Weak Armor wasn't a real speed boosting ability until Gen 7, when it got to raise its speed by 2 stages when hit by a physical move and not just one. And look, the mod needs all the help it can get, and after this buff, it didn't get anything useful for 2 whole generations. Nothing that really helped it. Nowadays, in Gen 9, they give it Power Gem, so it no longer has to use Ancient Power, which for Magcargo is massive. These buffs over time have formed to make it still ZU. Yeah, look, it got buffed over time. I never said they were meaningful. This mon is still bad. Now, when it comes to meaningful buffs, Volcarona was a Pokemon that was never given anything crazy directly. From what I can recall, it typically always had the same tools in its kit. Quiver Dance, Fiery Dance, Morning Sun, Bug Buzz, Giga Drain, Will-O-Wisp, Flame Body. The stuff you will usually see it use. It was always good enough to where Game Freak never needed to give it anything to directly let it set up. And it's been this way since its release, where its lowest placement was UUBL in Gen 6 singles. All of its buffs have been indirect. It's why we can't have nice things anymore, because it keeps breaking them. In Gen 5, when it was introduced, it made great use of gems, sure. But it also made really good use of Z moves in Gen 7, where it could promptly threaten to remove a wall from existence that would normally wall itself and team members. Heavy Duty Boots in Gen 8 was a godsend to it, that made it infinitely more consistent than it used to be now that it didn't need hazard removing support. And in Gen 9, it was originally banned in Smogon singles after a while because it abused Terra so well that it could win games on the spot. It's back now at the time of this video, but whether or not it stays, I couldn't tell you. I cannot wait to see what it abuses in Gen 10. If you consider getting a Paradox form a buff, then technically they buffed Entei, if you really want to think about it. Now, aside from gouging fire existing and being Gen 9's version of Mega Charizard X, don't at me, Entei wasn't really given too much to work with for buffs, but what it did get was nice. In Gen 4, it, alongside the prior mentioned Arcanine, were some of the happiest fire types because of the physical and special split, and then Stealth Rocks got introduced to just be annoying to them anyways. Apparently, Entei was supposed to get Flash Fire in Gen 6, but they wimped out, and in Gen 7 gave it Inner Focus, which would go on to counter Intimidate in Gen 8. So there is something. Outside of this very niche stuff, all it really got was some nice coverage moves over the gens, but what they gave it was valuable enough to be good enough to get banned in NU, which is fine. Extreme Speed is cool, but I feel like we need Wild Charge and Earthquake on this guy. Stone Miss, Iron Head, and Stomping Tantrum aren't cutting it. The most notable thing it got though was when they gave it Sacred Fire in Gen 6. Now that was something insanely significant and sees usage on every Entei set to this day. So I don't think I need to talk too much about the fact that the biggest buff they ever gave Blaziken was Speed Boost. The physical special split in Gen 4 was cool and all, and Blaziken liked that a lot, but it was fine enough without it. Its coverage over the years was really good, because Thunder Punch and Stone Edge were good for punishing Pokemon that tried to come in on it. And eventually getting Knockoff in Gen 9 let it hit Dragapult for super effective damage, which it very much needed given that the matchup in Gen 8 was god-awful for it. The Mega in Gen 6 didn't do much for it, but it was cool. But overall, the biggest buffs to Blaziken were Speed Boost in Gen 5, its coverage move pull, and then Close Combat in Generation 8, finally freeing it from High Jump Miss. Terra Flying Acrobatics is nice too, but everything can Terra. We're moving on from a martial arts chicken to a rubber chicken that randomly got lit on fire, and nobody can quite explain why they did that. This rubber chicken, known as Fire 3 or something, I don't really know what to call this mon. It's been like kind of buffed and kind of not over the years. But like, the little they did give it was massive enough to keep it viable. Obviously, there's Gen 8 boots. But I think the biggest buffs Moltres ever got were Roost as a TM, Flame Body as a hidden ability, and Defog to remove hazards. It doesn't really take too much advantage of its coverage options. Yeah, it has like Ancient Power, Scorching Sands, and Terra Blast, but if you're playing this Pokemon, you're playing it for the physical tank who threatens burns and heals off damage, and uses Flamethrower and U-Turn as its main attacks, with Willow and Roost as the status moves. Yeah, it can run Hurricane, but it's iffy. Now, while Defog got removed in Gen 9, it hasn't affected it that much, so I'd say this Pokemon has been eating. Oricorio Bile didn't get anything too crazy over the years since Gen 7. Its buffs have been very minimal, but what it has gotten has been weirdly niche. Quiver Dance was a move that should have been on there to begin with. I don't know why they waited until 2 gens after it came out to give it that. Heavy Duty Boots prevents it from being PU garbage, and Alluring Voice being introduced to hit dragons for super effective damage, and letting them know they're not safe is an amazing coverage tool. But my interest peaks in Revelation Dance. So Revelation Dance is the same type as the primary type of your Oricorio, which means it's always stab. This makes it into quite literally a better Terra Blast, because Terra Blast is 80 base power, and Revelation Dance, which also becomes your Terra type, is base 90. And I think that's really cool and awesome, and more interesting than the Flaming Rubber Chicken, who just sits there and fishes for Flame Body. It isn't great, but it's very awesome in lower tiers. The legendary Phoenix Bird itself is a Pokemon that, in terms of moveset buffs, never really got much stuff that mattered, like that was too crazy after Gen 4. In Gen 4, Ho-Oh got hit with the Stealth Rocks, which sucked. But in return, Sacred Fire was physical off of its 130 attack they gave it. Thank goodness. And then Brave Bird was really nice to have, over like Fly or, God forbid, Aerial Ace. Earthquake and Roost are huge for it, and it has plenty of support moves. But it was never truly a great Pokemon until exactly Generation 5 when everything changed for it. While Stealth Rocks would still always chip it for half, Regenerator being able to give it a third of its HP back on switch out was massive. This meant that it would come in more than once on Stealth Rocks and actually play the game. This was the start of a really bulky Firebird who really liked teaming up with Groudon to cause mass destruction in the sun, or play support with T-Wave, Willow, or Toxic. Either way it played, it was solid at it. And then yeah, in Gen 8, the Boots just turned it from an okay Pokemon into one of the best tanks ever. Finally, the Phoenix could live up to its damn name and come back anew like it's supposed to, without pebbles being thrown at it. Alright, this list got a little too heated. I know it's winter and all, but I think I'm gonna turn on the AC. Hopefully I don't freeze to death, and this winds up being foreshadowing to a Ghost or Ice video. Peace out.